this story time is a lot more serious than any of the other ones I've ever had. I don't know how to explain it, so I'm just gonna say that this is a story about how I was almost trafficked, and if that is something that is going to trigger you, then I suggest that you log off or you go watch another one of my videos. Anyway, so when I was about 19, I've always been, like, since the creation of social media, I've always been active on social media. And when I was about 19, I remember that there was this man. I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to bring any attention to bro, none of that. But there was this man. And the man was an aspiring rapper at the time. And back then, I was running in these circles with different rappers. Like, everybody from LA remembers that era of, like, right before, like, when we were going through the jerk era, right before YG got put on, like when TF Third was on the radio, etc., etc. So, I say that to say, like, at this particular time, running into a rapper, especially being from LA, was not a red flag. And this particular guy, like, he was smooth about how he went about things. So, he would always, like, promote his music and stuff like that. And I remember he reached out to me and was like, hey, I have a clothing line, and I'm looking for some models, and I think that you look really nice in my stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, like, no problem. So he reached out and was like, okay, well, like, when can you come out, or, like, we'll do a test shoot or whatever. Modeling and shit like that was never on my radar. Like, my plan was to become a social worker. I wanted to work for DCFS and all of that stuff. So it never was it in my plans to be a model. But I knew, in a sense, like, this ain't gonna be like no big bag or nothing like that, right? So anyway, so the man hit me up and he was like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'd like you involved in. I'm like, all right, cool. He was like, where are you located? Like, I'll come get you. Of course, I'm going to provide the clothes. I'm going to pay you. And I'll have somebody do your makeup. And I'm like, all right, cool. Because I was like, well, my hair is already done. Like, I do my own hair. So, like, that part you don't have to worry about. He's like, all right, cool. So, red flag number one. And this is why, in my opinion, I feel like a lot of these red pill men, they feel like, this is why they prefer to have younger women, because no matter what game you was laced with, no matter how, this is coming from a child who grew up with her father. My father raised me. My daddy laced me with so much game, but at any age you're impressionable, right? Like, if an older man, especially one that's used to doing certain things or running a certain game, especially on a certain age demographic, they're gonna be able to get. They're gonna be more successful with that than maybe I would be recognizing it. So, first red flag was, he was like, I'm gonna come get you. I'm like, all right, cool. So I told him, like, oh, like, I get out of school. I was in college. I get out of school at whatever time. I should be home by this time. He's like, all right, cool. So I remember telling my mom, like, where I was going, and, like, I packed, like, a little bag or whatever. And the man picked me up at, like, 8, 9 o'clock. That's red flag number one, right? Thank God that I'm a person that's smart enough to pay attention to my surroundings. So, he was cool. Like, he was in the car, we were chopping it up, whatever. And y'all, by the time I looked up, I ended up in Woodland Hills from Inglewood. That means I was in the car for, like, a cool, like, hour and a half, right? So we get there, and there's other girls in the house. Red flag number two. There's other girls in the house. And it was this one girl, and I can't remember, like, I don't remember anybody's names. This was so long ago. Like, the situation literally I had a flashback of it the other day, and I was like, oh, damn, that did happen to me. So I can't remember this girl's name, but you could tell she was the bottom. Looking back at 32 now, you could tell she was the bottom. Like, she was the one that was going to, like, glamour you and recruit you into thinking that everything was everything. Because, men can seem scary. So if you have other women telling you, like, oh, no, it's cool, yada, yada, like, you're going to feel more comfortable. So, I come in, he introduces me to her, and he's like, oh, hey, this is Tay, like, she's gonna be, like, doing a photo shoot with y'all tomorrow, whatever. And the girl was like, oh, you're so pretty. And I was like, oh, thank you. And he was like, oh, yeah, she do hair too. So, I'll probably have her do y'all hair. And then y'all can go to the mall tomorrow and get y'all makeup done and whatever. And so she was like, oh, okay, like whatever. So now it's like, okay, so he's like, all right, well, we got an early day tomorrow. So like, let's like all go to sleep. Red flag number 3. So the part of me is like, okay, I knew in my head, I was like, as soon as all this is over, like, I'm going home immediately. I don't give a fuck if I gotta get on the bus. I don't care. Because it just, all of it didn't seem right. But where I messed up, and this is not to like shame or blame myself, but like I said, I'm 32 now. I can look back at these things and understand, like, so I should have never went anywhere with nobody, no fucking complete stranger at 9-10 o'clock at night. And then on top of that, I allowed you to drive me 2 hours away from home. Okay? Then when I was like, okay, well, like, where is like my room? Where am I sleeping? And the girl was like, oh, we all sleep here. We all sleep where? Child, this man wanted us all to sleep in the bed with him. Red fucking flag number 4. So in my brain, and you could tell it was very obvious that I was uncomfortable. I was not okay with none of this. So I like went to sleep. Well, I tried to go to sleep. I'm already a very light sleeper, but literally like the way it was, like the girl was laying next to me and he laid at like the foot of the bed or some shit like that. Like, and I literally like, how like you sit with your knees in your chest? That's literally like how I was like sitting in the bed. Cause I don't fucking know y'all. Like, and so my brain immediately was like in survival mode on some like, I don't want to upset nobody. Like, I'm already a victim of child abuse and SA. And so there are certain situations where like if I feel like I'm going to be met with any kind of aggression, especially back then when I really wasn't advocating and speaking up for myself, like I would be like, I just was like, you know what, in my brain I was just like, okay, I'm going to get through this, and then as soon as all of this shit is over, I'm going straight the fuck home. So it was like at 10 o'clock at night, this man had already drove me way over here. He's probably not going to drive me back, and I don't want no issues. I want to be able to like still get back to my mama when all of this is over. That's where my brain was. And then I think I was already in a state of shock. So my state of shock put me in fight or flight. And I was just like, you know what? Let me just not cause no problems, whatever. So every time I would notice myself dozing off, I would feel somebody like touching my leg. And I would always feel myself like snatching my leg back. And at some point, I realized like, I don't think that this man was ever asleep. I think he was playing sleep to like wait for me to go to sleep so that he could do whatever he thought he was going to do. So obviously I didn't get a good night's sleep. So then the next morning we get up or whatever, like, and the girl was like, all right, like the mall opens at this and this time. So I remember the girl getting up, she cooking breakfast, everybody ate breakfast, whatever. And while we were waiting on the mall and shit, like I did her hair, and it was like one other girl, but I can't picture the other girl's face right now. So there was another girl, so we did everybody's hair, like, so all of us is at the mall, like hair pent up. I think she took me to like Sephora, because I think with Mac, even back then you had to schedule like appointments. And so we went to Sephora and this lady did my makeup. And I ain't gonna lie, this is before I went to like cosmetology school, so this is before I even knew how to do my own makeup. And it wasn't cute, but it was just kind of whatever. Like when I came back, I remember him like saying something about it, and she told him like, well, like we couldn't really find nobody that was open, this is the best that we could do. And he was like, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna have such and such, like kind of edit it and make it look better. So then he's like, okay, like he has us put on the clothes, right? And he's like, all right, like red flag number 5, he goes, when you put these like shirts on, he was like, the bra strap shows through the picture, so like don't wear a bra. And I was like, ooh. Reason being is I was that kid that went through puberty, and I like got really, really big. I was tiny my whole life. Like I was always really, really skinny. I was that kid that like had a complex because my family's from the South, and then my mom would always make comments about like how I needed to eat or whatever. But then I like went through puberty and I blew up, and then I got like small again. So like literally like the summer after 8th grade, I got really chunky, and then literally like the week before I was scheduled to start high school, I was skinny again. So with that, like I had saggy breasts, I already had like I already had stretch marks and shit, so I was hella uncomfortable about this. So then the photographer comes, and I don't remember much about the photographer. I just do remember that we did we put the clothes on, we took pictures, and then and after all of that was over, like they were looking at the pictures. And this is when like dude's like nice demeanor flipped. And he was looking at the pictures and he was like, oh no, I can't use none of this. Like this shit is horrible. Like, look at your titties. Why are your titties this low? And this and this and this. And I was just like, well, you told me not to wear a bra. I could have told you like this is how they look. So what ended up happening was I remember him saying something to the tune of like, I can't use her. And like I said, my naive brain is thinking like, oh, like you can't use my pictures for the photo shoot. Okay, whatever. So I remember he was just like, he was really upset, and he was just like, you know what, like, come on, like, I'm finna take you home. So my brain, I was like, all right, cool, like, shit. So he gets me in the car, he did take me back home. And then I remember him telling me like, I apologize for being so mean to you. It's just that like, none of this ended up how I expected it to, but I think it's just because it was rushed. He was like, but like if I can plan this out a little better, then I'd love for you to come back. And I was just like, oh, okay, I'm playing the role because I don't want no problems. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, like, sure, that's no problem. And so he was like, but I'm gonna give you like $200 for your time. Red flag number 6. But I didn't know no better. So he was like, I'm gonna give you $200 for your time. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And so it took forever and a day for me to get this little $200. And then I remember at some point he reached out to me and was like, do you have any other friends? And I was like, yeah, I got a couple of homegirls. And he was like, if you send me, this is red flag number 7, y'all. He was like, if you send me a couple of your homegirls, he was like, I'll pay you for every homegirl that you send me. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had a homegirl that actually was like one of them ones. And I told her what was going on. And I was like, look, like the man said that he's going to pay me for every girl that I send. And she was like, oh, he's one of those. And I'm like, yeah. So when she went or whatever, she knew it was some bullshit from the jump. Like it wasn't a secret. And so she ended up going, meeting with him, and then he ended up like paying her and giving her money to give me, and that's how I got paid for it. Now, let me say this. When I started watching like Surviving R. Kelly, when I've been following like this Andrew Tate stuff and how he acquires these women, it has become very triggering for me, and I couldn't understand why. I couldn't understand if it was coming from a place of just me being an empath, just me being a human being and knowing these things aren't right, just me being a woman and knowing that, even when we don't try to be, we still are very vulnerable. I couldn't figure it out. And I was literally asking God to reveal to me, like, why is this bothering me so bad? And what am I to do about it? And that's when I started having flashbacks. I completely forgot about this incident. Like I said, this happened, I'm 32. This happened over, 13 years ago? And honestly, the sad part is if I was walking down the street and passed the man, I wouldn't even know what the man looked like. Like, I haven't heard from the man in years. I haven't heard anything about the man or anything like that. Like, if I would see him pop up or I'd see somebody, like, comment on something and it was somebody I knew, I would be like, oh, watch out, whatever. But that was about it. Like, and I have a lump in my throat, and I know that you guys can feel like the anxiety that I have right now trying to tell you guys this story, but I say it to say this. In the age of social media was still kind of new back then, but in the age of social media now, there's a whole generation of young ladies that are being taught to deal with a man for his money. And if a man can't do this and do that, then that's not the man for you. And a lot of these young girls are the same little girls that are growing up without fathers, without father figures, without big brothers that care, things like that. And I had all of that. And I was still able to be finessed. Now, I will say that if I was ever completely honest with my mother, or if I had ever called my father and told them what I was getting ready to do and how things were going down, they would have immediately been like, fuck no. Anybody in my family would have immediately been like, fuck no. And a lot of the way that some of these males will trick you into these kind of situations is, like I said, number one, they will glamour you. They start off being very nice to you. They're not going to tell you immediately what you're doing. When you look at like the Andrew Tate thing, like Andrew Tate would tell these women like, oh, like, you know, like, come kick it with us, come chill with us, pretty much being held hostage. And he's like, yeah, you're going to be a webcam girl for me and you're not leaving this house. They immediately become a slave. With the R. Kelly thing, you know, he glamored these women with the dreams of like they were going to be famous singers. Like, he was taking them to the studio and all kind of shit, but he wasn't making music with them. He was assaulting them. He was glamoring them. You know, one thing that I've heard a lot of people say about R. Kelly is the fact that, like, he was such a gentleman in the beginning, and then he'd switch up on you. And by the time he switched up on you, it was already too late. You're probably already living in his house. He's already paying for your care. You probably haven't talked to your parents in months. And that's another thing, is a lot of them will try to alienate you from your family. So, I have a lot of story times and I always tell a lot of stories, but this one is one that's just, even all these years later, it still puts a lump in my throat. It still makes my heart beat really, really fast. I will say that I'm grateful that it wasn't as traumatic or as violent or as dangerous as other young ladies' stories. And the only thing I can do with that is give all credit to God and the ancestors, because this is why listening to your intuition is so important. And like I said, as an older adult now, I can look at these things and go, that's a red flag, you know. But at the time, it was just like, oh, I could use a little extra money, you know, or like, oh, like, shit, it don't hurt them. I always wanted to try, you know. Whereas if this was some real legit shit, none of this would have just even happened the way that it happened. So I would say, like, my message to young ladies that are watching this is just use your discernment. If you're not sure, get references. I say that with everything. Get references. If you're meeting a complete stranger off the internet, I don't give a fuck who they are, who they say they are. Get references. There's always somebody that knows somebody. You know what I mean? And so it's like, when you really look at it, like, I'm just grateful that it didn't get worse. So I have a client in a couple of minutes. I'm going to go decompress and meditate so I can get this energy up off of me. I am going to wish you all a beautiful and blessed day. And I just pray that you guys take this story as a warning and heed my warning, because things are a lot worse now than they were a couple of years ago. And there are men that will unalive you just for saying no. So that's it. That's my story time, y'all. I'll talk to y'all in the next video.